Item number 2 is an application for a certificate of appropriateness at 6 South Oxford Street in the Fort Greene Historic District, docket number 16-3536, block 2100, lot 41, an Italianate-style house built in 1864, and this is an application to replace and enlarge windows.
Thank you.
Good morning, Harris O. of Landmark staff. 6 South Oxford is located on the west side of the street with DeKalb Avenue to the north and Lafayette Avenue to the south. The proposal being presented will be to replace the existing non-historic 1/1 windows at the street facade with new high-energy performance windows in a 1/1 configuration and a tilt-turn operation of the lower sash. The windows at the rear of the building, which is visible through a break in the street wall at the opposite end of the opposite side of the block, will be enlarged as well. And the architect is here to testify.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Amy Shakespeare and I'm a partner with Red Top Architects. So this house at 6 South Oxford is being designed as a certified passive house, which I believe you've seen some in front of you before. And so our intention is to as closely match the historic windows on the front facade as possible with the 1/1 tilt and turn windows, which I'll show you. The house is contemporary in nature on the inside, and the rear facade we are proposing more glass than was historically there. Part of the reason is to represent what's going on the inside, and part of the reason is to allow the sun to come in the house, which serves to heat the house. So the existing house is, like the last one you saw, has fallen into severe disrepair. It's actually been abandoned for something like 10 years. You can see it here. You can see a little bit better the condition. We will fully restore the front of the house as part of the project, but it is the damage is fairly superficial. And this is the rear facade of the house. It's a little hard to see because it has a shallow backyard and it's hard to get back far enough, but the house to the right is a little bit deeper than our house, and the house to the left is significantly shallower. Also, both houses to the right and left, to the north and south, are 1 story taller than this building. So you can see here is our house, and there's the one to the north, and this one's to the south. So we are proposing removing all the existing windows and creating larger openings. And these are the proposed elevations. So the windows will all be wood. On the front of the house, they'll be painted black to match the neighbors. And on the back, they will be actually stained natural wood. The elements on the back that are also visible here, these screen elements, are going to be made out of bronze, which will be sanded to be a matte finish and lacquered. And we're using them to both create shade elements on the back and break down these large windows into a smaller unit, sort of evoking the old rhythm of the windows on the back, on the upper floors.
Did you say the windows in the front would be enlarged?
No, only in the back. The front there will be exactly
okay,
the size. As you may or may not know, here's some details. The passive house window frames are heavier, they're thicker, both in depth and width than the historic windows. We are able to set them behind the brownstone in the front so that we only, at the perimeter, we can match the existing dimensions of the historic windows, but at the center, dividing horizontal, it's not a munch, it's, it's where the tilt and turn happens between the two. It's about 3/4 of an inch taller than the historic windows. And that's the best we can do. I've looked at probably every passive house company in the world, and they all seem to do the same thing. So we're proposing a company called Intis. They're made in Europe, but I've looked at 4 or 5 other companies, and they all literally are basically building the same window for the historic district. So to go back, this is the view from South Portland Street, 1 block to the west, and it's very hard to see because of the trees, but these houses along DeKalb have a 2-story addition, so you'll never really see the bottom of our house. But if this tree were to come down ever, there's a few trees in there, you would be able to see the top story of our project.
And the intent of the treatment on the top two floors at the rear is to break down the fenestration proportions to be more similar to...
The vertical elements
Right.
here and here, yes.
What are-
Place those to be, in, you know, if you go back to the original, to be located where the original masonry portions were.
And what is the material? I'm not sure I understand what
Of the
those...
bronze, we're making custom, you know, railings and screens just out of vertical,
They're like louvers?
Do you have a section through that, through those screens?
I don't, though I'd be happy to provide one. It's, no, I don't
Are
think we
they,
did.
are they
basically
muntins?
just-
Or no, what are
They're
they?
totally outboard of the wall, just
Okay.
slightly, and they're made of a horizontal piece top and bottom where we're going to weld on bronze rods, half-inch diameter bronze rods, just all in plane, evenly spaced.
And how far out are they going to be projected?
They're going to be projected only a couple of inches out from the
So they'll be
window.
proud of the brick, or?
Proud of the brick and proud of the window.
Do you have any images of the overall donut or the courtyard in the area that your house is in?
Only
That very tight one?
Yeah, it's almost impossible.
Right, but and you're not enlarging anything at the rear,
No,
are you? It's
absolutely not.
just the treatment of the facade.
Just the treatment of the facade.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Eddie? Okay. All right. We'll take public testimony. Robert Paris?
Good morning again. The Land Use Committee reviewed this application on November 19th as well and voted 6 in favor, 4 opposed, and 1 abstention to narrowly approve a motion recommending approval of the front facade, with which the committee had no problem, but recommending disapproval of the treatment for the rear facade. It was a close vote. The slight majority sentiment was that the removal of the historic material was not warranted, unlike the first application this morning where removal of the material was in the best interest of the building. Here, removal of historic material is in the interest of aesthetics, and there's a bit of an irony to what is proposed in that the pattern of the fenestration is altered and then a design treatment is added to sort of restore the rhythm of the fenestration that was there and now is being changed. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
And just a quick question. And you're talking about the historic fabric at the rear, is that correct?
That's correct, just the
Okay.
rear.
Thank you. Just want to clarify that. All right. The next speaker is Kelly Carroll.
Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. HDC feels that this is a lot of demolition proposed for an intact 1864 row house. The rear of this house also faces a thoroughfare with a low-rise view, which is very much part of the neighborhood atmosphere. HDC asked the Commission to work with the applicant to determine a less ostentatious configuration of the rear of this very old house. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers on this item? All right. Would you like to respond to that?
Sure. So, a couple things. First of all, as architects, we like for the exterior of the house to reflect what's going on in the inside of the house as much as possible. The existing, on the third floor, the program is dividing the space into 2 equal-sized bedrooms, which often happens. So it was our goal to create, 2 equal windows that will reflect what's happening inside. And on the top floor, the client had actually an interest in creating a greenhouse. Now, this house doesn't have any extra FAR, so instead of creating a greenhouse on the roof, that space is going to be open to an interior garden, which will have a roof that slides open and will be we want to bring as much light as possible into that space for growing of vegetables. So you can't see it from the outside, but it'll be an indoor-outdoor, like a sunroom.
And does it have, behind the parapet, does it actually have a skylight or something?
It
or
has a skylight.
It
full
has a skylight,
on it.
okay.
You can actually see, you'll never see it, because of the angle, but that is the part that
Okay.
lifts up. and
I see.
provides naturally. So we're putting windows there because, of course, we wouldn't just create holes in the facade.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is that would like as much sun to come in as possible.
All right. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Just asking Sarah to clarify what was approved at staff level and what is,
Okay.
Okay, so if the primary reason that this is not eligible for a staff level review is that there's some visibility. But beyond that, even if it were not visible, the staff cannot approve removing that much masonry to create the double height opening. So while you all approve sort of this configuration at the basement and parlor floor routinely, it's something that the staff cannot do. We can't remove more than we can't increase the size of openings by more than 10% in height, and so a double height opening would not meet that criterion. In addition, the staff cannot approve altering the top floor windows of rear facades of row houses.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Comments on? Yes, Addie?
Yeah, it just seems to me that since the rear of the building, if a tree happens to not have leaves, is visible from the street, it would be worthwhile to consider leaving the top windows in their original configuration.
That's what we would normally ask.
And you'd be willing to do that?
I hear you, and I thought you might have been in front of you on before with projects where we have done that. In this case, I'm a little, to be honest, less feeling that it's important because the donut is not at all consistent, and we're already a story below the adjacent buildings, which do have, So, I'm interested to hear what you all have to say about it, but we did speak about this with our client who asked that we move forward with this design, and I do think it works well with what's going on inside the house. If it's the general feeling of all of you, I'll certainly take it back to them. But there's, of many blocks I've worked on projects, and it doesn't have that consistent, ring, either in plan or in height. So I feel that it's already sort of out of, that whole corner of the block doesn't have any consistency whatsoever.
So are there other buildings that at the rear which are visible that have changed their facades and are not the historic facades?
I don't know specifically at the top floor, but there are many landmarks approved interventions in that area. I can show you some pictures
So
if that would be helpful, but that's not really the issue, I don't think. We want to do the right thing.
Talk a little bit more about, if it's okay, about the intention around the passive work here, and the extent to which it influences the back of the house, or might.
Sure. So passive houses, we try to limit the amount of, fuel burning, heating, and cooling as much as possible. So in the winter, we use the sun to heat the house, and so we don't really have a lot of options on the front of the house because we've got the historic facade. But the back of the house does face west, and so we have an opportunity to use the sunlight to heat the house. So there's a big computer program that calculates, so we try to, really we would do it on the south if we could, but we try to make larger openings facing the sun. And then we were able to calculate how much sun will come in through that, and then lower size our mechanical system to make up for that. So the goal is to use a lot of windows.
Right, but on this side of the house, are you gaining heat or losing it, actually?
We're gaining it.
Are you sure?
Absolutely. Because west, in the afternoon, not in the morning, but the windows will be incredibly well insulated. And
Great for the winter, not so good for the summer.
yes, and to be honest, we have a lot of deciduous trees in the backyard, which we are not taking down for that very reason.
Okay. I don't actually have a concern with this. I think that this is part of the program to fulfill passive houses, and this will be actually certified. And I also think that they've done somewhat contemporary method of trying to break down the large expanse of glass to relate more to these homes at the rear. Yes. And Diana, Michael, go ahead, and then Diana.
Yeah, I'm less inclined to feel comfortable with the top floor as it's currently presented. If a case were made that there was in fact a lot of variation in the courtyard and we could see it, I might be able to be persuaded about that. But as of now, we've had a pretty firm policy that the top floor of brownstones should retain their their original configuration for the purpose of unifying the feel at the donut. Even when it's not visible, this is visible. So I think I'd need a little bit more help in the presentation to make that case.
Okay, Dinah?
Well, I'm in favor of the passive house in general, and I do think my reaction was initially to the concern about the top floor. But seeing that at least the two adjacent buildings, that it's not part of a row anymore, I'm less concerned about the preservation of the upper floor than I would be normally, because it does be nice if we saw more of it. I actually would be willing to leave that up to the staff if they could establish that it's not part of any, consistent configuration in the donut, because as far as the design, it's very, it's attractive, it's suitable for a passive house, and only be preserving that upper floor, and the two adjacent buildings clearly are not, a part of a row. So, anyway.
Yes, John?
I agree with Commissioner Goldblum. The issue for me is not whether, of the 100 houses here, whether they've all been altered, and it's more that there's only, it looks like there's only about 5 that are visible from the street in 2 different spots on the block, and that visibility is what concerns me.
Okay. Fred, do you want to say? Yes.
Well, I think we have a split here. I think it's a close call, but I'm persuaded also because of the passive house issue, which is an attractive contemporary approach, I think, to any house in our city, but also because this is not part of a row anymore. So the idea of saving those top 3 windows in situ, I think, is somewhat lost, and therefore, actually, it would be a confusing looking rear too, with these 3 anomalous windows hanging out above the more contemporary facade below it. So I do think it's a close call, and if this were part of a row, a consistent row, I think we'd be right back to our normal way of viewing this, which is to keep those top 3 windows. But in this case, close call, but I would say I'm okay with the scheme as presented, but I think we've got a split here.
Right, but I can think of one suggestion, and I don't know if that would satisfy you, is I think that the treatment at the top floor and using the interplay of the screens could, in fact, you could change that pattern and make it more similar to what it was historically. So right now it seems a little more random, but I think if you're willing to sort of use the same material, but apportion it differently to reflect what are the normal sizes of the historic windows, and may address it. Or is it just...
I don't know. I don't want to be a hard ass, right? But I have a clear sense about what they're proposing.
Okay.
These rods, and I don't think that it's going to really give you that. I think it's going to be nice. I don't think it's a bad thing, but
Right.
And I hear Fred's,
Right.
your view, but I think that because of the visibility, because of our policy, because I really don't have a clear sense. We've done it plenty of times on buildings where there's a variation at the back. I mean, I don't think that the keep the top floor policy was always and only predicated on situations where the rows were uniform. I think it was a general sense that you want to have the retention of the historic fabric and material and feel of the courts on the top level, while at the lower levels things kind of went their own way. And I think that's a good policy. I guess I mean there have been cases where I've been persuaded that it's a good thing to let that go and not be dogmatic about it. But I don't see that here, either from the point of view of context or the individual building. I guess I don't see it.
Okay. Well, the policy of keeping the top windows, I I don't know if I have very strong feelings that it has to be a very rigid policy. I think in this particular case, the view is sort of oblique, and it's not the primary facade. I sometimes question what we're really trying to do in terms of a facade where certain things are allowed to be much more contemporary, and then the top floor we're retaining it, and what that sort of conveys. However, I think at this point, given the comments by the Commission, it may be worthwhile for you to just come back and just explore, I think, perhaps a more conservative view of trying to retain that, or if you really want to introduce more glazing as a part of the goals of bringing more sunlight, then you have to maybe look at it in a different way and maybe rethink how you're going to try and reflect the fabric, the existing fabric.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I'd love to do that. Okay.
All right, okay, thank you.